Next week, we'll wait until Friday and then we'll just put together a video with both the spoilers and non spoilers. But let's get into it. And then the other thing I want to introduce is what we'll start off with today. Any episodes of past Star Trek that, if you've not seen it, that will help aid you in understanding what's going on a little bit. And I think the two best episodes I could pick of Next Generation would probably be Measure of a Man and Data's Day. The character of Bruce Maddox that they talk about in this episode, and by the way, spoilers, is very much central to what's going on here. And so let's get into it. But those are the two episodes I would recommend watching, really, to understand some of what's going on here. Okay, so we start off Picard with a shot of space with Bing Crosby's Blue Skies, which is a really nice way of leaving off from, or how they left off the last time was Data and Nemesis died, but before he died, he downloaded his consciousness into B4, which was a Soon-type android that was a prototype. Data did this in the hopes that by having his memories in B4, that B4's neural pathways would be able to become more complex and be much more of an individual. So last thing we see in Nemesis is Picard talking to B4 and telling him how much his brother meant to him. And then as Picard's leaving, B4 starts humming Blue Skies, which is a song that in the beginning of Nemesis, Data was actually singing to Troy and Riker at their wedding. So one of the things I noticed is the first shot at the Enterprise, the windows on 10 forward are a little bit off center, and 10 forward is actually supposed to, the reason it's called 10 forward is actually deck 10 directly forward of the saucer section. So it was the frontmost part of the ship, or one of two frontmost part of the ships. The other one being above would be the captain's quarters. So I thought that was a little bit weird, but whatever. The next shot we get is actually Data and Picard playing a game of poker together, and Data's actually in the uniforms for the movies and not Next Generation, showing a little bit of discontinuity going on here. And that discontinuity was a good thing to kind of have there, because next shot is they go up to, he's playing cards, and then Data disappears, and all of a sudden they're at Mars, and Mars blows up, and Picard wakes up, so it was a dream. Leaving us in Picard's bedroom, where he strolls up to a double door, opens it up, and reveals that he's actually at Chateau Picard, which is his home in France, where his family is known for making wines and stuff like that. Now, the thing I really loved about this show is how they just got right into stuff. So the next thing, we're in Boston, and we meet the character Dodge, one of the new characters. And she's attacked by guys in black suits. When I first saw this, I thought Section 31, because they're notorious for wearing black suits. And they're talking about she's going to activate, and I'm thinking, oh, they've got her mixed up as somebody else or something, and this is how the story's going to start. And then they say, get her before she activates, and I'm like, yeah, they probably targeted the wrong person, and she finds Picard for some reason. Maybe she knows him or something like that. This is all the stuff that was running through my head when I saw this. But then she activated, and she kicked these guys' ass, like, big time. And I was just like, that is like one of the coolest scenes, I think, fight scenes I've seen in Star Trek, like actual physical fight scene I've seen in Star Trek. It was pretty neat. So we go back to Chateau Picard, and it turns out he's got two Romulans working on his vineyard with him. And that was, we knew that from the trailers and stuff, but still, like, what was the connection there? Well, it turns out that Picard's retired from Starfleet, and the reason he's retired is because the Romulan supernova, which I thankfully retconned, so it was originally the Hobus supernova, but that was always kind of dumb because a supernova would not take out multiple star systems. So they kind of retconned it to the Romulan star, or Romulan sun, was getting ready to supernova. And it sounds like this event was something that they knew about long in advance. So there was a preparation time that they could kind of, get things ready and stuff. And so the Romulans, not having the ability to evacuate all the millions of people and stuff off of Romulus, decided to ask for help, and they asked the Federation for help. Now, at this time, what we learned was, at the end of Star Trek Nemesis, there was some talk about the Romulans wanting to talk to the Federation, but I guess that fell apart because it sounds like they were still enemies at the time that this event was going on. But despite that, Picard was able to talk the Federation into helping. They promoted him as from a captain to admiral. He left the Enterprise to take charge of this rescue operation, and a large part of it was they were making transport ships at Utopia Planitia on Mars, which is the large shipbuilding facility for Starfleet. And during this, well, let's backtrack. To help out with it, they didn't really necessarily have the manpower. So, and Starfleet has a place called the Daystrom Institute that you can fall back on. The Daystrom Institute was studying a long time how to build androids like Data, but they didn't quite get there, but they got very good basic androids that could be used as like workers and stuff like that. And I don't know why they decided to go this route in Star Trek, but I guess for the story. But it turns out that they made a ton of these androids that they called synths as workers to help build the transports at Utopia Planitia. But in the past, and it's actually canon, that Starfleet's also used holographic, basically holographic people to help build things and stuff. So I don't know why they would go that when the science is already there and try to build androids to do this, but maybe it'll explain that in the future. Anyways, during the building effort, these synths, as they call them, go rogue and decide to, for whatever reason, call up a mutiny and pretty much destroy Utopia Planitia, and 92,000 people lose their lives on Mars, and apparently Mars is still burning to this day in the show. So this was a huge loss for Starfleet, and they decided not to put more resources and stuff into redoubling their efforts to try to save the Romulans. Instead, they just decided to let the Romulans disperse, and the ones left behind on Romulus to basically die from the supernova. Picard wasn't happy with this and resigned in protest because he felt it was not, Starfleet to do that. Not, from based on what we've seen in Star Trek, that's not Starfleet. They would definitely rescue those people, but they decided to leave them to die. So we learn a lot about the events, and some that was talked about a little bit after, and some other shows and stuff during this interview scene on Picard. After being quite upset how the interview went, he's outside drinking a glass of wine, and the woman from the first scene that was kicking all those guys' ass, Dawes, shows up. She asks Picard if he knows her, and he says no, and they don't seem to know each other, but she says there's a familiarity there. So they help stitch her up. She had a cut on her head, and they go to bed. She's missing the next day, and during that night, Picard had a dream of a painting that Data was doing. Turns out the painting is real, and it was something that Data gave Picard. So there's two paintings. There's one that is of this woman's back, and there's another one that's in his archives at Starfleet. He goes to the Starfleet archives and finds that other painting, and the painting is of the girl, Dawes. It's her face. And the painting is titled Daughter. So after discovering this, he leaves the archives, and she's out there waiting for him. It turns out she was able to track him down, which he notes is a skill that she wouldn't be able to do because it takes a security clearance to track him. So she had some kind of way of hacking. In a scene earlier, we see that she's actually talking to her quote-unquote mother, and her mother somehow reactivates her again, like in the first scene, and she's doing a lot of hacking and stuff with a little portable, smartphone or PDA device, tracking Picard, similar to that of the way Data would work. She's going through the inputs all really quick and everything. After this event, the people that we're looking for in the first scene finally do track her down. They get in a fight, and one of their helmets comes off to reveal that they're Romulans. And then one of the Romulans that's downed clicks a suicide pill or something in his mouth that's like acidic and spits it on her, and then it starts to burn, and also one of the disruptors that they have gets penetrated, and it blows up and kills Dawes. The police apparently find Picard after the disruptor blows up, and for one reason or another, somebody's covering something up. They said that, they just found him with a knock on his head or something to that effect, and there was no evidence of anything else going on. So it's kind of fishy. You would think he would go back to the site to see if there was any evidence of anything happened, because when a disruptor blows up on a roof, you think that would kind of leave some scarring or something like that. So Picard goes to the Daystrom Institute, to find out if androids can be made of flesh and blood. And basically, this one doctor there, I can't remember her name, but she's played by Alison Pill, who apparently worked with Bruce Maddox, who's one of the characters that you'd see in Measure of a Man if you go back and watch that. Has been working on androids for years. They got really, really close before the ban on synthetics. Yes, there's a ban on synthetics. I forgot to mention that part. Ever since the Utopia Phoenicia incident. And so their android department is really just able to work in theory. They can't build anything. They can't do anything. So it's just a ghost town when he goes in there. She's talking to him, and we see B4, remnants of B4. And she says that basically Data's memory wasn't able to stay in B4, and just they lost most of it. So there's not much to recover there about Data. He tells her about Dodge, and what ends up happening there is she talks about a theory that Maddox had where you could actually take some of the neural pathway from an android like Data and use it to somehow clone beings. So some part of Data would live in those beings or something like that. It's something called fractal neurotic cloning. It's just a Star Trek term to help move the story along. So the last scene we see in the show is actually her sister, which we discovered that they're created in pairs. So she has a twin sister named Soji. And Soji's at this Romulan reclamation site. Apparently she's a psychiatrist, and it sounds like they're taking Borg and deassimilating them. And she's some kind of psychiatrist to help the Borg that have been deassimilated deal with some of the mental issues and stuff they have from being part of the collective. So I don't really know what's going on here yet. They'll probably explain more of it next week. I'm really intrigued. I thought it was cool that the music they used for this part was actually the Romulan theme from Balance of Terror from the original Star Trek. But if I had any theories right now, I would say, yes, there's a part of her from Data that maybe Maddox had part of Data's neural pathway or something like that for some reason. Maybe Data donated it. I'd have to go back and watch those episodes myself. I don't know if he had given him a sample or something like that. Turns out that she's working on this reclamation site, which is an old Borg cube that's not active or doesn't seem to be active, and they're doing something there. What it is to that end, I don't know. I have a feeling that, honestly, this is probably where she was created, or they were created using Borg technology. Maybe Borg technology was used in the androids. And my theory is maybe something happened with the androids where they got reconnected to the collective. And since they're not Borg drones, the collective used them to destroy Utopia Phoenicia because they can't assimilate anybody. So maybe that's what's going on here. That'd be interesting if that's what happened, and it was the Federation and the Romulans working together to get this evacuation underway. And if they used Borg technology in this way, and it backfired on them, and then they covered it up, that's really honestly a lot of what I kind of feel might be going on here. But we'll have to see. I don't know if my theories will hold or what will happen with this show, but so far, I really like it. I think the storytelling's really good. Like I said, there's some visual stuff in there from Discovery, but there's also some visual stuff in there that's obviously Next Generation. And the holographic displays and stuff like that don't bother me because there's an episode of Deep Space Nine. You know, I know some people were saying, well, they didn't have holographic displays in Next Generation. This is a few years in the future, and there was an episode of Deep Space Nine called The Visitor, where events that happened in The Visitor would happen actually a little bit further ahead, but around this time that this episode's taking place. So like Jake Sisko's like, you know, an older character and stuff in this. And there's a scene where they're on the Defiant that they brought out mothballs to do an experiment that Jake was working on. He lost his father in an accident, and he was trying to get him back. Well, anyways, in that, there's a mention that Bashir, an older Bashir, is saying, I can't get used. How do we ever work on these two-dimensional panels? And he says, I don't know. Somehow we made do, is what Dax says. So they do make sort of slight mention of three-dimensional, maybe holographic displays or something like that. Anyways, I feel like for the most part, Star Trek's back. I'm pretty happy about it. I don't really have necessarily the same like overall problems a lot of people had with Discovery. I think Discovery's a cool action flick, but I definitely longed for something that was a little bit more telling of a story, a little bit more of a meaning. When you look at some of the stuff that's going on in the story, like the incident on Mars, that's a really tragic event, a really huge tragic event, and it kind of mirrors another huge tragic event we had called 9/11. And I think what's going on with the Federation here is a similar um, situation. What's going on here in the U.S. You know, we have a lot of things that are really questionable, like the Patriot Act and stuff like that, go through. A lot of people are not happy about it. Some people don't really care. You know, but truth be told, there is some there's some freedoms and some stuff that we gave up for security, and I think that's what kind of is mirroring going on here with the Mars incident going on. Um, Not only did they leave the Romulans kind of abandoned, but there was some. Sounds like Starfleet was restructured in a way that allows them to have a little bit more power in the name of safety and security. So we'll have to see how that plays out through the episodes and stuff. But seems like that's one of the things they're grabbing from culture. I think another one will probably be immigration or something like that. We'll have to wait and see. But anyways, you guys let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you like this video, hit a thumbs up. I think the format will just be one video next week. I've been kind of thinking about how I want to do this. And so, yeah, it'll be a non-spoiler section, spoiler section, just one thing. And yeah, you guys have a great day. Later.